businessman from Norwich is tonight facing a long prison sentence after being convicted of murdering his former girlfriend and her new partner.
The victims, Karen Brown and Kenneth Snell, were stabbed and beaten to death on Halloween last year. John Moody tracked them down after being told that Karen was having a relationship with Mr. Snell. In the most distressing part of the trial, jurors heard a recording of both victims pleading for help in calls to the police. Our chief reporter Kim Riley has sent this from Norwich Crown Court.
Kenneth Snell's home at Cringleford near Norwich, where John Moody took a terrible revenge on the woman he described as the love of his life and her new partner, who'd restored her faith that not all men were bad. This was the sandwich business Moody and Karen Brown ran in Norwich city centre. Their 12-year partnership, one of violence, bullying and intimidation. When she ended the relationship 2 years ago, his obsession for her didn't die. It was at a beer festival that he learnt of Karen's new partner, matching the description of his golfing friend, Mr. Snell. He called in at this restaurant to check the address, setting off there armed with a kitchen knife and claw hammer. In court, he said he could remember nothing of the horrors that followed, the defence claiming at the time he was suffering an abnormality of the mind. The judge had asked the jury for unanimous verdicts, and less than 2 hours after they retired, they'd reached them, guilty of murder on both counts. Moody, dressed in a dark suit and red tie, stood impassive in the dock. We then heard a moving impact statement from the Snell family. They said the family home, a place of so many happy memories, had been tarnished by his brutal act. It had become a place of horror.
The outcome is satisfactory, but at the end of the day, it doesn't bring back Ken or Karen.
Do you have any thoughts about John Moody himself?
No. He's got his just desserts. We feel very sorry for his family. They're victims in this as well as us. And he has now got to do a long time behind jail.
Is there any lesson to learn from this?
There is a domestic violence issue here. Karen did initially report it to the police, and then it seemed to have gone away for 14 months. But we'd encourage anybody involved in domestic violence to come forward and let us know at an early stage, and hopefully we can give her the support and advice to get them through that.
Did you ever feel that John Moody was mentally ill?
Personally, no.
In a statement, the Brown family described Karen as a shining light, a ray of sunshine, who'd at last found happiness after years of torment. She'd been taken from them by a cold-hearted killer. Moody will return to court tomorrow morning for sentence. Kim Riley, BBC Look East, Norwich Crown Court.
Well, all this week on Look East, we're trying to uncover the truth about the number of migrant workers in this region. One common belief is that foreign workers take jobs from local people. But is that true? Here's our business correspondent, Richard Bond.
Well, Stuart, in a sense, it is true, but it's a bit more complicated than that, really. There are as many as 100,000 migrant workers in this region. They work in sectors such as agriculture and food processing, doing jobs which British-born workers aren't always dreadfully keen to take up. It's also true that foreign workers are very good at actually finding work. Let's look at the latest employment data. Nationally, in the 3 months to June, 188,000 people got a new job. Of them, the vast majority, 145,000, were people born outside the UK. Now, employers I speak to often comment on the excellent work ethic of migrant workers, which sometimes contrasts, they say, with the attitude of British workers. You also need to bear in mind that most migrants come from countries where there isn't a developed welfare system, so if work is available, they tend to snap it up. A British person on benefits may not always be sure that taking a low-paid job will make them better off. It's an issue the new government is looking at as it reforms the welfare system.
Richard, thank you.
Well, on Monday we saw how migrant workers without jobs were resorting to sleeping rough in woodland around Peterborough. But in tonight's investigation, we reveal how even those in work struggle to find decent accommodation. We went out with officials from the City Council to see how bad the problem is.
They're on the lookout for poor living conditions.
It's changed a bit.
And it's not long before they find them. Joe Hodges and Peter Bissant are Peterborough City Council enforcement officers. Their job? To make sure landlords aren't acting illegally.
Oh, what, do you live here?
No, I don't live here.
By overcrowding homes or leaving them in an unfit state, like this one.
The landlord and the letting agent have the responsibility to licence the property with the council. This one isn't licensed. These conditions that we've found in here today are quite extreme.
This is very common, yeah, particularly in this area, I have to say. This is the worst area of the city by a long way.
And it's the area where many migrants look for cheap accommodation, making them vulnerable to being exploited by landlords. On to the next house. The tenants here are paying £90 a week, but the house isn't up to standard.
Hello? Can you come down?
The council thinks there could be 400 unregistered houses like this. It's trying to crack down on landlords, but some campaigners think it's not going far enough.
Where you have deprivation in housing, that is where so many of the problems of today start, and I want to see it stopped before it does, and we need to get more prosecutions for people who don't run houses properly.
But collecting evidence against landlords isn't always easy, and it's a slow process. At this house, Joe has to use a translator on the phone to explain to the tenants their rights.
So we've got to make sure that we explain it very carefully and make sure that they, that they can understand everything. Thank you.
Hello?
It's a complex problem, and although authorities say they're determined to clamp down, their resources are stretched. So in the meantime, hundreds could be living in appalling conditions while landlords continue to cash in. Fatima Manji, BBC Look East, Peterborough.
And in tomorrow's programme, we round off our series on immigration, looking at the plan for the future. How will our region balance the need for overseas labour with ensuring local services can cope?
Well, despite the weather, thousands of people crowded onto the seafront in Lowestoft for the annual air show today. It's one of the biggest public events of the year in this region. But there's a question mark tonight over one of the star attractions. The details now from Alex Dunlop.
Hello there, Stuart. Well, you can see behind me the last of the stragglers packing up to go home. Have a look over this shoulder. That's the storm cloud that's just passed through, one of several today. We've had everything thrown at us. Rain, sunshine, thunder, lightning, even hail, would you believe it. But neither the pilots nor the punters were put off. Of course, one of the biggest draws today was the RAF Red Arrows aerobatic display team. They put on a great show, but here's a question. Could this be their last season? The clouds over their future could hang far heavier than those we saw today. It costs, would you believe it, £9 million a year to keep these planes in the air. And the MOD, of course, is looking to cut costs. At least one MP is calling for the Red Arrows to be mothballed so that the money saved can be spent on public services.
I think it would be very short-sighted to cancel something like the Red Arrows. They are, after all, British ambassadors to all over the world.
You think the Red Arrows could go?
I think so. They're effectively a squadron of aircraft that does nothing other than entertain the public and do that very well. You might have a case not to answer almost for getting rid of them.
Well, the government won't comment, of course, until its defence spending review is announced this autumn. But I'll tell you what, there are 160,000 people who are here today who would be absolutely devastated if this iconic display team were to be grounded. Back to you.
Alex, thank you very much.
There's lots